Recently, you must have seen that there was a big controversy over a film which was earlier named Padmavati and then changed to Padmavat, and then everybody was involved giving their opinion on that film, and then afterwards somehow there were some cuts that were made, and afterwards that film was released. And on the release date itself, there were probably 1 million people who watched it, and everything has quietened down after that. This happened even with earlier films. If you may have seen a film called Dangal, it happened, or some other film called Sultan. There is a big activity of campaigning for films and making it as though for you, your opinion and your viewing or otherwise matters quite a lot. And everything quietens down just a few days after the whole thing has been released. You see this thing not just with films. You see that with newspapers. There is a big headline every day. And that headline, after some time, you just find that there is some second headline which comes. And then you read that. And there is a third headline the next day. And you feel that, yes, there is something special happening. And then what happens to that headline the next day? It just disappears. There's nothing that is talked about that headline further. Nobody carries forward any story. You see that on TV? Your so-called prime time viewing. Everybody is discussing something which is supposed to be the in thing on that particular day. And that seems to be the most important thing that needs to be viewed or heard about. And that same thing the next day just disappears. There is some other thing which replaces it. Now you see that not just with viewership of TV, and there are people who are fighting over things as though life and death depends upon it, and the next day they don't fight over that particular thing. They're fighting over something else. You see that with fashions. There is a particular trend, somebody decides to set, and then he or she utilizes a number of celebrities to set that trend, and everybody wants to follow that. And after some time, that person decides, now there should be a second trend. And then again, these sort of celebrities and so spokespersons are utilized for that purpose, and everybody starts following that. You realize what is happening. These are people who set trends and utilize you to forward that trend. And then once they have achieved what they want to achieve, they just quietly forget about the whole thing, and you too forget about the whole thing, till he or she gets a bright idea and sets another trend, and then you follow that trend. In other words, there are some people out there in their wisdom, and more than their wisdom, their ability to manipulate situations, who utilize you for their own welfare. And you, following the typical herd mentality, keep following such trends and feel that you are something special because you are following a trend. So when you are following something that is trending, you feel you are in the whole thing. But you do not realize that you are hurtling from one trend, from one fashion, from one news headline or one prime time thing to another. And you are being made a victim to all that those people who remain in power or have this ability to influence others, they decide in their own individual capacity how to lead you. Now, if you're fine with this, it's okay. But if you realize this, then it should make you pause. What is it that you're doing? If you feel happy being just a follower and hurtling from one trend to the other, it is fine with me. I have no questions. I have no problems. But if it is not, then you will realize that you do not hurtle from one trend to the other. If you cannot set a trend, at least you decide what is the trend that is worthwhile for your life. What is that trend to follow which will make your life meaningful? What is that trend to follow which will bring about your welfare and your well-being? When you decide that, you will find that most of these activities that are taking place, you may just appear to be fashionable. You may just appear to be well-read. You may appear as though you know what is trending. You know what is being discussed in prime time. But if you really look into it, that hardly matters in your life. It matters in their lives who set those trends. And you feel it matters in your life as well because you are so animated, you are so agitated when you discuss topics like this. That you are so feeling so nice and cool that you are following a certain trend. But actually all that is happening is that you are being made a follower, you are being made a part of the herd which keeps on being shepherded by certain people. I sincerely suggest you look into whether you would want to be just a part of such herds, or you will decide, have that power of discrimination, what in Hindi is called Vivek Buddhi, which trend to follow and which trend not to follow. And that should be decided by you as an individual, not because somebody has thousands of and lakhs of people and millions of people who are following a certain trend, not because of that, but whether that suits you as a person, one, and whether it involves your welfare and your well-being. Well, if it involves that, by all means go ahead. If you find that you evolve as a person, by all means follow certain trends, there is no problem. But if it is just a means by which there are people who utilize you and make you a pawn in their own game of becoming big celebrities, etc., and setting trends, well, you are being controlled by people of that type. You are in their power, consciously or unconsciously. Most of the times it is unconsciously and appearing as though you are absolutely consciously doing such activities. Pause. Think whether that is really in your welfare or not. So, the next time there is such a huge build-up about something, whether it's a film or whether it is in the newspapers or it is in so-called prime time, pause. My suggestion to you is that look into all this, especially this prime time thing. If you were to watch the whole discussion even for an hour, most of the times what you will see is that they are busy shouting at each other. And nobody is there to listen to anybody else. And they are shouting over each other. So you can hardly make out what is being said. When you get out of that whole thing, all that you realize is probably a few sentences here and there which made any real sense. But you get that feeling that, oh yes, what a great time you had listening to all those discussions, and you feel very enlightened. But are you really enlightened? You just get that feeling that, okay, this anchor has been so influential. He did a great job. And there is this one person who spoke, who made everybody else quieten down. And there is this one person who was keeping on shouting all the time. You are part of a game that is being played on the TV. And after all the time that you have spent, you hardly get any knowledge out of it. And you go with that agitated frame of mind after all the trouble that you have taken all through the day, listening to all this, and you feel enlightened, but actually you are very troubled. And that gives rise to a disturbed sleep. And you wake up in the morning and you wake up with the disturbance and keep on hurtling with all your activities all through the day. Pause. Pause and think whether that precious time after you have done all your hard day's work is worth being utilized for activities of this type. Pause. And if you find that there is something worthwhile, please continue. But if it is not, if you get the realization that I get, then pause. And not just pause with things like this, pause with everything that is so-called trend setting. Because in the trend setting, somebody is setting a trend, but you are being made use of. Therefore, once again, pause. Look into what really suits your personality and what is really beneficial for you to evolve as a person. Then follow that trend. Or, better still, become a trendsetter yourself. And when you become a trendsetter, see to it that the trend that you set is something that does not manipulate, that does not exploit, that does not use people and make them into herds who just blindly follow you. They follow you blindly, but they feel that they are open-eyed. Actually, they are blindfolded. So see to it that if you become a trendsetter yourself, be very careful with what is the trend that you are setting. And if you cannot become a trendsetter, be very careful with which trend you are following. I hope you get the message, my friends. Thank you so much.